Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its Ukrainian proxy forces. Now, look, at the onset of this conflict, we witnessed the Ukrainian forces start to use first-person drones to attack Russian targets. We originally saw this activity tracing its roots back to the war in Iraq, specifically large-scale engagements around the ISIS city-state of Mosul. At that point, we also witnessed the deployment and the use of large-scale quadcopter-type drones being used as both kamikaze-type drones and dropping explosive devices from those systems onto enemy forces. Now, what we're seeing right now in terms of how this drone war is evolving, we are seeing the Russians using its military industrial capacity on an unprecedented scale to then use these systems, to use these kamikaze drones and other types of drones in this ongoing war. And where you're at right now in terms of the satellite map, you are looking at the special military industrial zone that has been set up, purposely designed and built 600 miles east of Moscow, designed to manufacture drones, all sorts of drones, on an industrial scale. Now look, right now we are seeing the Russians use hundreds of drones per day in the ongoing conflict. Now obviously there are different types of drones, from the Shaheeds to the smaller Lancets, and then obviously even smaller systems below that. We are also seeing the development of artificial intelligence, target recognition, in which the Russians are using these systems to attack Ukrainian targets. Now, what we are seeing right now pales in scope to what occurred early in the conflict. Now, here is where it is going to be becoming very problematic for Ukrainian and NATO forces, is that a year from now, the scale of Russian manufacturing, development of these drone systems are going to continue to multiply and increase on a massive, monolithic scale. This area here, again, about 600 miles east of Moscow, and you really got to kind of zoom down to appreciate just how big this site is, and little cars can kind of give you an idea to compare and contrast. You can see ongoing development, the manufacturing of buildings, ongoing, and this continues. There was originally an industrial zone in this area designed to build cars that has since transformed itself because of the war. Now, what is concerning military planners in the West is what is going to take shape of the Russian military capacity in terms of drone and drone warfare 1 year from now, 2 years from now, and then fast forward 5 years from now. Russian capability is going to be many times greater in 2 years And in 5 years, NATO doesn't really know at that point what Russian capability is going to look like. This war is evolving, it is changing. The nature of war, especially when it comes to drones and the capability of those drones, and then obviously artificial intelligence, target recognition, acquisition is going to become more and more advanced. And at the end of the day, it is going to be very, very difficult if you are a person who is in the infantry, or you are on a manned system, such as an armored fighting vehicle, a tank, in this kind of environment. When you maintain air supremacy, the Russians maintain air supremacy. They are able to launch drones. They are able to operate certain types of aircraft and unmanned systems over Ukraine that the Ukrainians are unable to do against the Russians. Now, yes, you will hear about some of these attacks by the Ukrainians against Russian targets, but by and large, those attacks pale in comparison to the amount of systems that are being launched by the Russians against Ukrainian targets. The Russians now are using massive amounts of decoy drones. Decoy drones that then have the ability to transmit target location of air defense systems. So the Russians are now launching these drones against Ukrainian forces or Ukrainian military targets, infrastructure targets. The Ukrainians respond because they can't tell the difference between a decoy and an actual kamikaze attack drone. The Ukrainians then attempt to engage that decoy. That decoy now has the capability of identifying that air defense system that is trying to engage that decoy. Once that happens, the Russians then have the ability to target those air defense systems. So again, the war is evolving, it is changing. And again, because of war, because of the need to adapt and change, the Russians are rapidly doing this, especially when it comes to drone systems. Drone systems right now, in some cases, are highly classified by the Russians. And again, continuing to adapt, continuing to change, and continuing to become, most importantly, more successful in their engagements of Ukrainian targets. It is much more costly for NATO and the United States to manufacture high-end air defense systems, missiles, radars, than it is for the Russians to manufacture decoy drones and drones that have the ability to engage and target air defense systems. We knew, obviously, that this technology was out there. The early iterations of, say, the Israeli Harpy and other systems such as that have rapidly advanced in this conflict. So the question, 5 years from now, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, what is going to be the scope and size of Russian capability against Ukrainian and NATO forces? We don't really know. We know this, though. We know it is rapidly expanding and rapidly increasing, and at the same time, the doctrine, the strategy of this drone type of warfare continues to rapidly evolve, as does countermeasures for these drone systems. Land drones, air drones, naval drones. Again, the shape of warfare right now, we're watching change at an incredible pace. An incredible pace right now. It's actually kind of terrifying when you look at what is actually happening regarding drones and drone warfare. Now, the Russian offensive continues in the Donbas. The Kurikova offensive, in which we are seeing multiple envelopments by Russian forces in this Kurikova pocket that has been created. Let's look. Again, I tend to do this day in and day out, but I think it gives you a good perspective in terms of what is happening on the ground. Going back to just the 1st of November, and then we'll fast forward to where we're at now. Very difficult situation for Ukrainian forces. We're hearing more reports as well in the Kursk Oblast, in which we believe that in addition to Russian forces, North Korean or elements of the North Korean military are assisting Russian forces in this area of operations. Now again, more likely than not, this is giving the North Koreans skill sets. It is giving them the ability to train and test its infantry units and gain more practical experience in both drone warfare, artillery warfare against an active, high-tech enemy force. That the North Koreans can take that skill set back to North Korea and possibly have better success against the South Koreans. That's why the South Koreans are worried about this. The South Koreans are not getting the same training, the same experience that these 10,000 North Korean troops are getting on the front lines around Kursk. But it's happening. And that's why South Korea is right now none too happy about this benefit that the North Koreans are receiving. Experience is very difficult to obtain. If you are a military unit and you are not in a state of war, you really don't know what kind of military unit you have until that unit has actually been tested in war. And unfortunately for NATO and the West, at the end of this war, in all probability, upon victory, the Russian armed forces will be the most battle-hardened, battle-tested military on the planet Earth. And that's just a fact. So we will continue to cover, we will continue to report. Thank you for joining us today. More to come. As always, have a good day.